don't make assumptions about where you can go or not go based on what other people did. Don't read too much into the numbers or into the brand.
Kind of shifting gears a little bit, can you maybe share a little bit about your results? So maybe like we can go over some of your, anonymized candidates or that you work with, just kind of to give some flair on what it will look like for the audience.
Absolutely. The number I've been mentioning, just to give you some up-to-date numbers, and then I'll give you some longer term numbers. But in round one, 78% of the applicants to Stanford that I worked with were interviewed, which is a remarkably high number. 55%. Let's see. This is some data from 2018, 2019. We had 19 admits at Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton out of 37 applicants. So Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, as you probably know, are the trifecta.
Sure.
So I tend to measure our performance in terms of those top three schools. To give you our historical numbers, percent of clients interviewed at Stanford going back to about 2008, 34%. So that's very good at a school like Stanford. Harvard, 24%. Wharton, 51%. Over time, we've gotten stronger. So in the past few years, our percentage of applicants interviewed at Stanford is now 53%. Harvard, 70%, and Wharton, 74%. So, and I say interviewed.
That's impressive.
Because that's where we have the most control. Obviously, we can help them improve their interviewing skills, but at the end of the day, they are who they are, and
So not trying to be nitpicking on the data, but like, are you maybe applying? Like, are you maybe suggesting clients who are more in the stronger suit apply to those schools only, or is it that why we have such a high percentage in terms of interview invites? And
that's that's actually a very shrewd question. But actually, you might think that that's the reason why. Certainly I will tell you that the vast majority of our clients, they say Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. And maybe 10 years ago, they would have said, okay, sure, I'll apply to Chicago and Kellogg. But nowadays, I get more and more people who say, I get into Harvard or Stanford, or I'm not going. The return on investment is not there. So we do get a ton of people aiming for those schools. But the interesting thing about Harvard and Stanford is their brand is so, galactically powerful that even people who we tell, I'm sorry, I don't think you're competitive there, they say, but Paul, I need to know if I could get into Harvard or Stanford. And we help them. So you might think that our numbers are skewed towards super strong people, but we work with people who apply to those schools, and some of them get admitted. So it's not skewed necessarily.
Very similar to my experience as well. Can you maybe share a little bit about like some not case studies, but like cases around like who, like, or they're just like general profile, like for example, this candidate who were, I don't know, coming from a consulting background, like who had like a GMAT score of like 700 something, like do you have like, I don't think you'll have like an average, but like maybe just give a little bit about people's profile there.
Happy to do that. We'd probably get more people whose backgrounds are what I would call typical versus ones who are atypical. And obviously from a differentiation point of view, atypical is preferred. But, obviously a lot of people from branded organizations and from typical pre-MBA careers seek MBAs and they come to us. So we work with a lot of private equity people, consultants, and things like that. So the trick there is, I would say that our numbers, I don't actually have it broken down by atypical and typical, course, but it's quite high. I would say our typical applicants are not at any disadvantage. And the reason why, maybe for that branding thing we were talking about before, that yes, they may not be diverse applicants, but they've jumped through all of the hurdles. They've proven their own ability to succeed in tough environments. So what I do with those clients is I look for differentiation, and I look for life challenges. I look for stories like you personally have a very interesting story, South Korea to Japan to the US, and then that's an interesting story. There are things you could do with that. And of course I work with lots of people whose profiles are very similar to each other. So, or at least on the surface, they're similar to each other. So you're always looking for that thing that's different within that group.
Can you maybe share an experience where you thought that this candidate would never, I mean, well, I wouldn't say never, but like would be really challenging to actually make it to the top schools that you just mentioned and actually got into? And like, can you maybe share, like you probably, like know their story, but just like a glimpse of like their story maybe?
Absolutely. I will try to not give away too much about their
Sure.
confidential background, but I recently had a client who was from an African country, or her family was, and she was American. She is American, and her background is healthcare, and it's a segment of healthcare that I would call not really business oriented. It's delivery, healthcare delivery, but it's not a physician. And her undergraduate school was not one of the top 15. It was a respectable program, but nothing amazing. And her test scores were not at the median of the target schools. But she had, and what we did was we used what she did have. She was a totally determined person from a very unusual professional background and from a very unusual personal ethnic cultural background. And we drilled down on those, and she was admitted to Duke, which is a close to top 10 program, even with a score that was not quite competitive. So
Gotcha.
I would say we have a client like that every year. And there's advice that we give people to. Here's another example: a client who was actually quite cookie cutter in demographic ways, not diverse really at all, fairly elite education, and the typical suspects in terms of post undergraduate employment. Nothing really unusual extracurricularly. They had just kind of standard. So how do you differentiate someone like that? I mean, the decent numbers, decent GPA, and decent test scores, so no problem. Well, what we found out was that this person had or at least did have a major anxiety issue earlier in their life. And so we told a story around them overcoming, and just how drastic that particular issue was and how they dealt with it. And they got into Wharton. So
it's interesting because it's not only about those business impact. Like it's all about just like telling a life story more so than.
Exactly. I would say Harvard and Stanford in particular, God bless them. They give applicants the space to tell a story. Stanford has 6 essay slots. Most of them are small, but nevertheless. And Harvard has an unlimited essay. At least this year they do. And Chicago Booth, at least this year, also does not limit word count. And I really respect those schools because they're saying, look, we are willing to take the time to hear what your story is. So with those schools in particular, I tell the client, let's that's what they're trying to find out, because the schools can gauge who you are from your resume to a large extent, your transcripts, your test scores. There's a lot that matters that they can tell from that. So what they want from the essays is a little bit more about what makes you tick, what's driving you. Have you faced adversity and how did you deal with it? Do you know who you are? So that's what we use the essays for. So you're right. We don't, I will tell you that my default for Harvard and Stanford is not a professional story unless the professional examples fit directly into the deeper story.
Gotcha. Yeah. How do you have you worked with international applicants? And if yes, is there a different approach you take?
We work with international applicants constantly, and I would say probably at least half of our clients are probably, probably not U.S. born, or maybe something like 60% might be U.S. born, but so quite a few international applicants. And do we approach them differently? Well, they have a certain amount of built-in differentiation being international, unless they're from India or China, which presents its own challenge because so many applicants apply from those countries. So that's a different challenge. But so they have some advantages because of their differentiation, and I try to leverage those differentiators, and it can be hobbies, it can be family challenges, it can be socioeconomic, it can be sexuality, it can be religion, it can be it can be career too. I mean, it's not like we're not trying to talk about careers, but I mean, I think one difference is that probably the international applicants are probably not as expected to have been as involved in extracurriculars. I think it may be some cultures are not that's not. I mean, I would say that I'm not sure I'm answering your question. Is that you're asking is it a different approach or
is it a different approach?
It's not fundamentally different because we're still looking for differentiation. We're still looking for life challenge, but we do try to. I mean, if someone is applying from, let's say, Uruguay, or Uganda or something like that, I mean, obviously they have just a ton of differentiation built in.
Of course.
So I would probably focus more on their country for those applicants than I would someone from India or China whose country is not really going to differentiate them. What I would do with India and China is I drill down on the specific geography of their country. Like, are you from Beijing and Shanghai, or are you from the far west, or and so we try to do what we can from within that country.
Gotcha. So any tips for those who are reapplying? I got into my school the second year I started applying. So
congratulations.
What's that?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been a while now, but yeah, is there anything that you would do for candidates who are reapplying?
Absolutely. It used to be that the reapplication was the kiss of death, that you were marked, you had a stigma, but that is no longer the case. I think most schools are literally neutral about reapplicants, and so we tell schools that don't worry about it. You have it's another shot on goal, so don't worry about it. But make yourself a different applicant. In other words, not totally different, but improve yourself. So what are the three things I tell them? I say, raise your test score, unless it's a 780. Try to raise your test score. Try to get a promotion, or maybe change jobs entirely to get a more responsibility. And the third, I call these the three big ticket changes, would be a major extracurricular impact story. Like maybe you were just a volunteer before, try to become a team coordinator or something. So show more leadership. So if they can, and I tell them, if you can get all three of those, that trifecta, you've done it. You will be perceived as a different applicant. There are some schools like Wharton who I believe 10% of their class is reapplicants. They're basically welcoming reapplicants. It does show determination. It shows what you want. And those are all good things. I would also tell them, don't just warm over your previous application.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe rework your essays, even your letters of recommendation, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
freshen them up. But it didn't work last time, so don't expect it to work
This
again.
time. Yeah. Got it. I think those are all my questions from me, and I actually collected some questions from the audience, who had some questions for
Sure.
you. So, first question was obviously why MBA, especially given less importance on MBA. I don't know if you're the right person to ask this question, but you probably ask this question to your clients and to yourself obviously a lot. So just kind of wondering like what would be the benefit or just why MBA?
It's a great question. It's a very topical question, and it's a question I do get asked. And I certainly don't tell everyone that the MBA is the only way to your goals, or even the best way. I think what the MBA, I mean, the problem is that the MBA is a wonderful degree, but the schools know that, and they know they can keep raising tuition, and they're doing that. So it's becoming more and more expensive. So the ROI is becoming tougher and tougher. So applicants are looking for alternatives, and those alternatives are there. The 1-year MBA is growing in prominence. The master's in management in Europe, especially. Even things like Quantic. I don't know if you heard about Quantic. It's like an alternative free MBA. But so clearly people are trying to step into that void. But I think the traditional MBA still gives you things that other alternatives don't. And one of them is the network with a group of people.
Of course.
And not just any network, but the best network. So
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, you can learn the skills that an MBA teaches you, on Coursera probably,
Mm-hmm.
but can you spend 2 years with people who are at least as good as you are and maybe better, and who are going to be your network for the rest of your career?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. I mean, that's what I think ultimately it's the network and also the prestige brand factor that is why people pay so much for the top programs. So I still think the MBA is relatively unique just as a degree in its versatility. It's not channeling you into a single career. You can use it to go into HR, into technology entrepreneurship, into consulting, into banking. It's still it's an ideally versatile degree. So I think it still has value, a lot of value.
Gotcha. No, I totally agree on that. It's I think like looking back, like I forget a lot. I forget a lot of the things I learned, but I don't forget the people I studied with. So that's another thing. So another question is, I have a PhD. What can I expect to take from an MBA other than the title? I don't I don't really know if this is the right question for you, but
I would really say if you have a PhD and you have little work experience, I would say an MBA is not the first thing you should be looking for. I think you need to show that you have leadership. You need to show that you have exposure and awareness of business. And then once you get that, then maybe an MBA is helpful. But someone who's, let's say they just got their doctorate, and do they need an MBA to break into business? I would say, wow, that's going to be tough. Unless you're, well, it's not. It sort of depends on the candidate, but the MBA, it's going to give you a lot more than the title. It's going to give you the. I mean, usually doctoral degrees are fairly specialized. So that's what the MBA is giving you, is a versatile set of skills that the PhD did not give you. It does not give most people. So the MBA would be more than a title. It would be a set of skills that are going to show employers that you're not just an egghead, that you're not just an expert in your field, that you can function in business. So.
Gotcha. So this is an interesting question. If I can get along with people anywhere, what benefits, if any, come from going to a worse ranked school, assuming I get into both?
It's a very intriguing question because those people skills are really, really important. The schools value them. And, there are people like Bill Gates and the list goes on who don't have degrees, and they're very successful. So, and part of that is just their people skills are great. I think the other thing is they are very focused people and they create their own environment. They create their own, what did they say about Steve Jobs? He created his own
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem. So you don't if you have those skills in terms of determination and people skills, you don't need an MBA to get where you're going, and you might even be able to get where you're going with a school that's lower ranked. The thing about lower ranked schools is they may be out of the top 15, but in their region they may be the source of
Hmm.
a ton of the local talent. Like, Nashville has Vanderbilt, and Nashville is like the healthcare hub of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So if your goal is healthcare and you know it, why bother with Harvard? Why
Mm-hmm.
not go for Vanderbilt? Because they hire, and
Mm-hmm.
that locally its brand is. And the same with Emory or University of Washington in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
They within their region, they
Mm-hmm.
are the elite
Yeah.
degree. If you know where you're going regionally,
Mm-hmm.
geographically, then there's no need to get a top 10 MBA.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What key factor, I think you kind of answered this before, is the most important to get into a top MBA program from a non-elite undergrad school in non-prestigious work experience?
I would say you need to have outstanding numbers to show that even though your undergraduate school was not rigorous academically, it did not hold you back, and your raw skills are very strong. So I would say you want an outstanding test score.
Mm-hmm.
I would say your work experience, even if it's non-prestige, you better have been a rock star.
Mm-hmm.
You better have a ton of leadership and be
Mm-hmm.
fast track at that non-prestigious work experience, because to show them that you really, that you're a big fish in a small pond. The other thing I might suggest would be try to join an extracurricular organization that does have that brand,
Mm-hmm.
like Make a Wish or whatever and
Yeah.
try to get some of the brand that gives you.
Gotcha. Paul, I think that was all the questions I have for you. If there's anything that you want to maybe, share with my audience, who's probably in their, career looking for an MBA, or who even, graduated from their MBA and then, in their, jobs, if there's anything that you want to share with them.
I would just say, don't make assumptions about where you can go or not go based on
Hmm.
what other people did. Don't read too much into the numbers or into the brand. I still think the schools are looking for a diverse class of interesting people, and if you are someone who's kind of been leading your own path, then you shouldn't assume too much about your chances based on
Hmm.
what you've read somewhere. And the other thing I would say is that probably you need to think in terms of your personal story, that they are evaluating you not only in terms of your resume and your professional success and your numbers, but sort of your own challenges. So I would say if you're thinking about business school, challenge yourself in your life in whatever way you can. Not only professionally but outside of work, and because I think the schools do respond to people who've been successful and who've challenged themselves. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that's it's it's interesting because you have to challenge yourself to get into an MBA, but once you do challenge yourself and then you kind of get out of it, you might be already there. So
well, I mean, if you challenge yourself before the MBA, you'll be able to handle the challenge getting the MBA.
that's true.
I
Yeah.
think I don't think test scores are enough anymore. If they ever were, I don't think a high GPA is enough, or branding. If you're someone who's been risk averse your entire life, then you're at a disadvantage to some extent.
Mhm.
So
Gotcha.
so take some chances.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for your time today.
Sure.
Really, really appreciate it. And I'm pretty sure all the audience got valuable lessons today.
My pleasure.
So much.
Thank you, Young.
Thank you.